Hello and welcome back to the Casual Hour. I'm your host, Bobby Pease. Joining me is the gamer on the go, Chase Kinnicky, and a very special guest today, Director of Ground Shatter, James Parker. James, thank you so much for being here with us today. We absolutely love your game.
Thank you so much. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Glad you've been enjoying it.
Yeah, Chase has been right there with me, teaching me, because he's the real strategist of the show, and I'm relatively new to the genre, so I've had to bring Chase with me.
Don't put that evil on me. Don't.
That's who you are. And I wasn't going to go down this path without you, and we've had so much fun over the last 4 weeks playing your game and getting to the point where tonight, when we go live, we'll be going to the big grand finale of the current build, and we're not in great shape, but having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, so there's only one save slot, correct, for the game. So we are playing the prologue of Fights in Tight Spaces. So anybody who's watching our regular Monday nights are all right for fighting in tight spaces. Beautiful name. Yeah. Those people can watch that full run unadulterated. So we're just going to play from the prologue here, so we can get James in and talk a little bit more about this game and how it came together.
That's good. That's less pressure on me as well then. So yeah. I'm not going to accidentally ruin your several weeks worth of
I've done
play.
A pretty good job of that myself.
Yeah, we're doing fine on that. Goodness.
But no, yeah. So we got the prologue pulled up here, which is available currently on Steam and Xbox. You can download this prologue for free and check it out. Highly recommend you do that. And we'll be playing through the first level outside of the training on that prologue. We also have the quick look at this video up as well from a few weeks ago.
And the game is in early access. How much is the regular game at this point?
It is $25.
Okay.
Or whatever your local currency is.
And you launched recently, right? This came out.
Yeah, it came out at the end of February, so we've been out 6 weeks.
Nice.
And James, before we get started here, I've got a really important question. So the Casual Hour, we have a podcast that we do every Wednesday. At the end of the year, we'll do our Game of the Year show like we always do. We have really struggled with how to deal with early access games, whether they should count towards the year that they came out in early access or the year that they came out as a full release. Bobby and I really like this game a lot. So I don't know. I don't want to hold you to whether the full release is coming out this year, but if it was just the early access release, should we consider this for Game of the Year, or should we wait until it comes out fully?
Well, obviously, from my point of view, it would be good if it was eligible both times. So it could get in this year in early access and then next year as a full release. I think in general, from a dev point of view, especially like we intended our early access version to be like as high quality as people would expect for a full release, because I think having an early access version which is too early in the process does a disservice both to the game and to the audience. So we'd much rather come out strong with something that people really like and engage with, and then use the benefits of early access, which is having large amounts of feedback from a lot of people and using that to make something even better, rather than going from something potentially mediocre to something good. I'd rather so the aim with our early access release was that it would be kind of as good as people kind of would expect of a full release. So I wouldn't be hurt if it was considered for Game of the Year, of course. But like we really want to make the version 1 release that big step up in terms of quality and polish and content, and incorporating all of the suggestions and feedback that we've been getting in, which we've started to already with things like the dark mode and different ways to play the game, and we're going to continue listening to people's feedback on that.
The dark mode's really pretty, by the way. I
it really
is very
is.
Much.
And one of the things we've mentioned over the course of playing this on our streams is that it really does feel like a full-featured game already. I think your point about having early access doesn't mean you can just put out a half-finished game. It is still a product that we are enjoying as it is right now. And I imagine being a card-based game, turn-based strategy, roguelike-y elements, that this kind of genre lends itself well to something like early access, where you can make tweaks and the audience can go back and play it multiple times, rather than being a story-based game that you either get to the part where it's done in early access, or you finish it in early access and nobody goes back to play the full release once everything's been added to it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, we've been really kind of amazed at how sticky it's been in terms of the number of hours that people have been putting into the game, like going back, trying out new builds, new decks that like we never even considered. There are people on our Discord right now like trying to break the game, basically, in terms of getting combos that are so big that the user interface breaks down, and like, all of those things that kind of you get sort of free when you're making a game with all of these interconnected systems, that people find ways to use it that you never, from a development point of view, ever really expected. So it's nice that we can keep on kind of layering up these features so that, like you say, yeah, people can keep going back to it.
Totally.
I saw Bobby, on Discord that had a combo that was going to be doing like 2 million damage, and I was just like laughing so hard at the numbers like stacked up on that card. It was
yeah
great.
Shout out to Swen, who's the most dedicated to finding ways to break the game.
Yeah, it was so cool to see.
Let's show James some more high level play here.
Sure.
as you jump in. I think we have a very important do we not get to choose decks in the prologue? Is it just the one deck?
Correct. Right now, for when we started off, it gave me this option. But I do have a question about that. I would love to know what your favorite deck so far is, James, and what you've been going to when you play through.
Yeah, so when I'm playing, I partly out of kind of development pragmatism and partly because it's got all the cool animations, I tend to go for the aggressive deck because you get some quite high-powered moves quite early on, which means you can finish the early, you can like tear through the early levels and then start to finesse the deck as you get to some of the trickier parts of the game. So that's one I really like. But like, yeah, every time we put in a new one, there's kind of new interesting combinations of things. And the reason we keep it simple in the prologue is just so that we want to give players the kind of balanced deck, an idea of all the things that are going to be possible, and then in full game give them that kind of starting choice. And we're going to add things like a deck draft mode where you get even more granular control over the selections at the start as well. So yeah,
that'd be really exciting. So, okay, Bobby, I see that we don't have any real damage dealing cards. We have Head Smash, but we don't have the combo for that yet. So, James, why don't we let you handle how would you handle this very first turn that we've got here? What would you do on this turn?
So the guy's going to kick you, the guy's behind you. I would push him into the toilet stall to do your push damage.
Okay.
Then I would slip around the other guy.
Yeah.
And that way you'll get them closer together. Plus the kick guy will have done extra damage to your punchy guy, and actually the punchy guy will do damage to the kick guy as well because he's going to act second.
Yeah.
So you'll do the maximum possible damage there for the, like you say, slightly limited set of cards that have been dealt.
Perfect. Push him into the stall, and then you said you would slip around over here to the side of him, the punchy guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I guess I can head smash him.
If you do that, he'll turn to face you and punch you.
Oh, that's true.
Whereas if you don't do it at this stage, he'll get kicked in the wall and then he'll punch back.
All right, so we can just end it here and see what happens.
It's going to be less impressive, but it will feature more red-on-red action.
So I have a question about that, and I'm happy you brought that up because there's been a few times where we've been playing where we thought we would get some of that red-on-red action, as you called it, and it just never triggered or went through it. Is there anything that we're missing, or Chase? Like what? I don't know what's happened there.
Especially with gun-toting enemies, where it feels like we put somebody in front of the bullet path and then they decide not to shoot that turn. What are we missing there?
So there's two things that might be happening there. The rule generally is that if a character is moved into the path of another attacker, then that attacker will be triggered to take their action. There's an exception to that if you just step into that path and then step out of it. That won't trigger them because that's too easy to kind of abuse as a mechanic. It's I guess it's a little bit hazy in terms of the rule set there, but generally if you move one enemy into the path of another enemy, they will get attacked. or if you move out of the way of an attack. Sometimes the attack order will... I've seen situations where people think that if an enemy moves in front of an enemy during their turn, they're likely to be attacked. But that all depends on the attack order at that stage, so it's not inevitable like it is if you have kind of directly influenced it yourself.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've got some options here to figure this part out here quite a bit. Okay, so I'll default to you, as I'm enjoying having other people play the game for me right now.
I feel like this guy's not countering us, right?
No.
First stage, I don't think that's happening quite yet.
Yeah, 11 damage here, 11 health, 10 health for what we got left.
So I'm sure this is not optimal, but I might do like a quick strike hammer fist on... Well, I do like a long strike to the guy near the stall, dark red.
The animations are just so slick in this game. The style, you've really nailed, I think. I absolutely... like the way the dynamic camera works and just how you can zoom in and out, like it's got such a polish to it, and even some momentum that like I wouldn't expect for something that's more turn-based like this.
And then shift, that means you could go through the red guy to your left.
Yep.
And then why don't you quick kick him over to the wall to at least bunch those guys up. They're not going to attack each other, but...
He'll attack him.
Or never mind, they will. Sorry, I'm more of a tactical genius than I thought.
So James, how did you maintain some of the momentum? Like, again, like for this game being turn-based, like it does have this tone and momentum style to it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that was kind of crucial to us was making it feel like you were that action movie character and that you were assessing the situation, but when the actions play out, they're in real time. So it's that kind of, you're conceptualizing it as the pauses aren't real pauses in the fight; they are just you working out what you're going to do next, and that kind of feeds into the replay system and all of that stuff.
Yeah, there's a definite flow to this game that, despite being turn-based, is still really impressive, and I feel like that's something you guys have done with your previous games as well, Skyscrapers and Rico. Is that just something? Is that a design philosophy you guys have that you just really want to keep up? Yeah,
so for me, it's the kind of the reason I started Crown Shatter as a company was that I wanted to make the sorts of games that I wanted to play, and that all my influences are classic arcade games and first-person shooters and action movies and like high-intensity type things like that. I'm not a big RPG player or kind of fantasy worlds. It's all about these kind of visceral, fighty things, and just like the over-the-top nature of kind of Hollywood action films lends itself so well to games, and it's nice to kind of be able to draw elements from all over that kind of world into different genres. And like doing a deck building strategy game is not kind of the natural step on from doing Rico, which was a first person shooter, but there's definitely elements of it that kind of the fact that it's very stylized and the fact that it's when the action plays out, it's big and bold. It's kind of drawing on those same elements, even though the genre is very different.
There's a sense of satisfaction that I get playing your game where, like, completing a round, especially like there's been a few tight spots when we've gone over the last 4 weeks with our run. Where
tight spaces, if you will.
Tight spaces, yes, sorry. My mistake. And I was like, I don't know if we're going to make it through this. Like, this is going to be brutal. And then the satisfaction that comes from it, like, I recall some of those first times playing a game super hot. You mentioned first-person shooter and just the way that you felt after completing a room there. Like, this game builds that same style and that same sort of feeling for me as a player where, like, there's immense satisfaction. And sometimes, like, even surprise that comes from that satisfaction. Like, I didn't know that this was going to play off that way, how they interact with one another. And then you've got, like, this giddiness on top of satisfaction. There's just a lot of emotion coming from a deck building game, which, you know, I have not yet experienced quite like this before.
James, I would like to hear more about the direct influences that you had, but before that, how do you feel about these rewards? What would you pick? What's your thinking behind something like this?
Shove is definitely the most useful card there. and the best value. Not necessarily here at the start of the game, but as you progress, having a shove in your deck is immeasurably useful, because it's free for a start. It moves people out of the way, which can either do damage, can bring them out, or can just allow you a path to get out of a tight space. So yeah, I like the. I would have picked the spin kick, because it's a low combo based move, and therefore it can chain up to some of the bigger combo moves. But against shove's the sort of no-brainer.
The star.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah, I know we've been playing a lot with the counter deck. That's where we are right now in our regular stream. So I was kind of like, oh, counter's real good. But if we don't have a deck that is built for counters and blocks, then maybe that is less of a useful card for something more mixed phase like this one is.
I think I'm going to try and get to the gym, by the way. So I'm going to go to this bottom tier and work my way down towards the gym to see if we can upgrade down there.
Sounds good. So James, what are some more of the direct influences? I know on the stream we've talked about games like Into the Breach, which is one of my favorite games of all time, Slay the Spire in terms of deck building and things like that. Were those two games things you looked at and saw? Were there other games that also directly help influence this?
Yeah, they were definitely the main two, but also Hoplite, kind of earlier on, just because that does such a great job of with a very small array of systems and ideas, kind of fractals out into this amazing deep experience with loads and loads of options. And I wanted to capture some of that simplicity, I suppose, but then also combine it with the complexity of a Slay the Spire or something like that. And we're never going to touch them in terms of kind of the quantity of cards necessarily, but because we also have the movement elements and the Into the Breach type placement things. So, but hopefully we can get close on the pure deck building side of things, but also have this tactical layer as well.
No, totally. I could see that, and I think that just the way that this all kind of synergizes together, like even with the deck building and the strategy that you're seeing with like the tactile piece of it you mentioned, like I personally, like, something in my monkey brain just works so much better with that, and like how I understand it and how it all comes together for me. And it's been a lot of fun to try and learn and anticipate. Really, the anticipation I think on this has been a big one for me, unlike some of those other experiences I've had.
I think one of the things that changed, like when I was first thinking about the idea, the card element wasn't really there. It was going to be more about selecting from a limited number of options that you had. But what the deck building provides and what having a set of cards provides is a kind of necessary piece of improvisation for the player to say, here is a subset of my overall options being presented to me each round. How can I get out of this situation?
Speaking of how to get out of this situation, Bobby, you seem to be surrounded by 4 dudes.
I'm a popular friend of friends here. I will default to you two if anybody would like to chime in on what might be the best move for the current situation.
I feel like you need to kick one of these guys so then you can step around the other ones. But James, how do you feel?
Yeah, no, that's so the quick kick, front kick is always really useful because it does a bunch of damage. It moves the enemy and it moves you, so you'll be out of line. So I would suggest the person who's directly in front of you to quick kick first,
Nice.
and then do front kick, and then you'll move out of line because the front kick's got range.
The same person.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was.
And now you can step out of the way, and both of the thugs will get shot.
That's what we want. We want some of that red on red action.
Perfect.
Love it. It's just so satisfying. It's so good. I don't care how many times I see it. Like I will just rewatch and rewatch and rewatch those animations. And really quick, I gotta say bravo on the ragdolling that happens in this when you drop somebody. I've just been enjoying that immensely. It's so good.
There's a vocal faction of people who want the forces that are applied to the ragdolls to scale with damage, so that when they're working on their decks that do 7,000 damage in a single punch, they basically want them to explode into their constituent parts and bounce around the room for 4 days, which I think might undermine some of the stylishness that we've baked into the systems. But it's a nice idea conceptually.
Yeah.
Maybe that could be like an Unreal mutator that you can throw on at some point. We were talking about influences, and there's one that we haven't mentioned here that just seems incredibly obvious to me, and I don't know if it's so much of an influence or what exactly is happening. You're published by Mode 7, and I saw that was in conjunction with Bithell Games, and there's a game out there called John Wick Hex that Mike Bithell made that very much feels like this in a lot of different aspects. Can you talk about how those two games compare and what happened here?
Yeah, they're very so we were already working on this when John Wick Hex was announced, and so naturally we were like, oh, this is interesting. Let's see how they approach some of the kind of similar problems that we've had, or the kind of doing a tactical game that is action packed. So yeah, that was both the announcement and the release of that happened during development fights. So we definitely watched that with some interest. And it's I really like John Wick Hex. It feels like it achieves what it sets out to do, which is to make a game that makes you feel like John Wick, in that you are traversing through a space and you're taking down bad guys as you go. But I think the nice thing is that they've ended up being quite different, even though they've got quite a lot of shared influences. The actual experiences are very different when you're playing it, and they've got a lot more interest stuff with the narrative and voiceovers and all of the kind of high production value things there. And we've had a bit more time and a bit more ability to kind of really go to town on different systems, and we're not, I guess we're a bit less bound because we don't have the license to have to worry about and juggle into things. We can really kind of push the edges of what the character can do and what other characters can do to him.
Sure. Yeah.
Awesome.
And honestly, like, as we've done the replay stuff, we love the replays here. I think your replays are just so much smoother than in John Wick Hex.
Like replays is like, so everyone involved in the project. So we've done this. Mode 7 did Frozen Synapse and Frozen Cortex. Bith's done John Wick Hex, and the replays are, we all agree, a terrible nightmare and should never be done. But the expectation is that you have them. So people like when we, in the announcement trailer, all of the comments said, I hope there's a thing where you can see all the moves afterwards edited together. Like, all of the comments said that. So there was no way we would ever get away with not doing it. So and then we've gone through multiple versions of it, and we're lucky. We have very kind of compressed environments and limited places where cameras need to go, and everything else is quite abstract. Whereas in John Wick Hex, they have realistic spaces to deal with, and they have a continuous movement from start to the end of the level. So there's an order of magnitude of complexity that they have to deal with that we didn't have to do with, which is kind of lucky for us, really.
Sure.
No, I think the environments for the replayability, especially, like being able to see those kind of orchestrate around, I can see what you're saying there with that 100%.
And from a Twitch perspective, it's also nice just to have these really clippable moments that, like, hey, just look at this cool thing that I did, and then if you want to know more, I can go and break down all the choices that I made. But it makes for a nice little preview of what happened.
I was going to ask a quick question before I start to hit some more people here around early access. Like, what's that been like for you? I've spent a ton of time playing some early access games this year, and I know that you mentioned earlier in the stream like how you wanted to have a polished product, but walk me through what early access has been like from a developmental standpoint. Like, how's that been for you, getting that immediate feedback? Has it been pretty helpful?
Oh yeah, hugely. I mean, we did a sort of closed alpha beta period with kind of a selected few people, but suddenly when you're out in early access and a load of people have bought the game and who are invested in it, then you can get a much better idea of which feedback is kind of bubbling to the top. So the things that most people ask for are likely to be the biggest either sticking points or most requested features or those kinds of things. It makes it much easier to prioritize, whereas with a small cohort of testers, they can be really dedicated to the game, but are going to spot different things as a consequence to people who've just seen the game on a Friday night, bought it on Steam, and are like, why am I being trapped in the corner at the start of a level? And those things that you can then address the things that come up in negative reviews or the things that people are complaining about on the Steam forums, that it's you suddenly get access to a huge amount more kind of intelligence, I suppose, over what is going on in the game and the things that people like as well. I mean, it means we can go, actually, the things that we thought people would worry about, they actually aren't, and they're quite enjoying. So we can hold off on those for a bit and concentrate on other areas.
Yeah. Bobby, are you employing the new tactic that we learned? Quick kick, front kick, slip?
Yep. I sure am.
Nice.
I sure am. I need any help I can get, because I know that tonight when we go into the final round there, I'm going to be in rough shape. Rough shape.
Very nice. So we haven't seen. I mean, we have a ranged enemy here. We've run into the stun dart card as we've played in our counter deck. But we haven't played with the trickster deck, right? Right, Bobby?
We have not played with the trickster yet.
So are there any other cards in the game right now that we haven't seen, or maybe planned for the future of more long range attacks?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, there's a couple of long range attacks. Sorry, there's a throwing knife. There's a throwing knife counter, which is quite fun. But yeah, it's partly stylistically, partly gameplay wise. We've wanted to keep it very much hand to hand from the player's perspective, because it kind of sets them apart from the enemies. It makes it a more dynamic kind of way of playing the game. And I think and people have requested a sort of gun fu type character, more of a John Wick type, and part of me would really like to do that, but partly from a practical point of view and partly from a stylistic point of view, it feels like it's not going to happen straight away, certainly, just because the animation overhead would kind of blossom out of control once you have to deal with someone holding a gun while doing all of these other things.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely makes a lot of sense. Sorry, I'm like trying to be as stylistic here. Like, I'm playing your baby right now, and I want to make sure that I give it the care and respect that it deserves, because I don't want to get KO'd in front of you.
You've got to the final level in the main game. This prologue should be cakewalk for you.
Yeah, it is. I'm definitely trying to
yeah, do nobody who's automatically countering us, nobody who can't be pushed, nobody who's gonna cause a major injury to us.
Not anymore.
This feels a little like we got the training wheels back up.
Yeah,
which is kind of nice. After the high stress that we've been going through week after week, this is, hey, a gunshot to our wrist, no big deal.
No big deal. No big deal. So how many, can you share, I know that you put out some of the roadmap stuff. What is kind of next, if you can share on stream here? What are some of your plans, decks, maybe other levels, anything like that you can talk about?
Yeah, I think so. So the immediate thing is going to be this deck draft mode. We want to make that kind of an opportunity for some of the more established players to kind of do things a bit more their own way, as well as kind of giving new options to people. There's a few features and things that we've changed recently that would lend themselves well to having more difficulty levels and having potentially modifiers to how you play the game, so we can kind of tailor the difficulty up and down a bit for people. Just a ton of new characters and levels and
that's great.
Things like that. We're not being specific about that yet because we want to.
Oh, sure.
We'd like to kind of drop in a few surprises there because I think it's nice, especially for players who've been kind of with us from the start, who will come into the game after an update and suddenly encounter a new enemy that does something new, then work out how to deal with them, and it'd be kind of fun to see how people respond to those things.
Yeah, I was also going to put it out there for you. Like, I'm sure that when the eventual live-action series comes out, based off the success of this game, I don't know if you can tell, this is the first time you and I have met, but Chonk is pretty near and dear to me based off of some resemblance here. And if you ever need somebody to step in as a Chonk for you,
okay.
I'm your guy.
His name is not literally Chonk, right? Like, you made that up, Bob.
No, I think his name is literally Chonk.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay.
So I volunteer as tribute.
Can you do a really heavy 180-degree swinging punch?
I can start now. I've been locked up for a year, so I haven't been as active. But if that's the mission, I will start right now doing push-ups every day till I can do it.
No, we need to keep that Chonk body though.
We do need to keep that.
You don't want to get too fit. That's the problem.
No, stay chonky, stay healthy, stay chonky.
So we talked about gameplay influences, but how about not like setting influences? Like obviously there's some James Bond, some stuff going on there, secret agent stuff. Did you any of that stuff seep into your process as you were building out this world?
Yeah, definitely. So the very first thing that we did when I came up with the idea, is I said to Connie, who does all of our video editing and social media stuff, I gave her like a list of films with scenes that had people fighting in helicopters and in cars and in lifts and in corridors, and I was like, just clip out all of these fights in tight spaces. And so we've got a sort of a really good reference library of kind of cool, interesting, well choreographed fight sequences that we can kind of draw elements from, and then that takes you into so many amazing martial arts films, kind of Hong Kong action and more modern stuff, and then like TV like Daredevil that does that really well.
That hallway scene.
So yeah.
So, like there's certainly, like, I could tell people if somebody asked me, well, what's fights in tight spaces, I could say, it's kind of like a mix between Into the Breach and Slay the Spire, but maybe a more evocative thing would be to say, hey, do you remember the hallway scene in Old Boy? It's that, but a video game.
Yeah. And I think the very first pitch I made was like a Twitter DM to Paul at Mode 7 saying, are you interested in a game that is a cross between Into the Breach and a Jason Statham film? And from that, everything else kind of flowed.
Who could say no to that?
Well, exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was one of the easier pitches I've ever done. And it really helps that Paul, having done Frozen Synapse, understands kind of the complexities and the issues to do with making a kind of an action-based tactical game with replays and other elements. Like, he's been through that process before, so when we're talking through ideas, he's coming from a point of view of real knowledge, which not every publisher would have, because they just wouldn't have kind of tackled those same problems as well.
And from a stylistic perspective, I can see, Frozen Synapse is also a very highly stylized looking game. We mentioned Super Hot, and I think that's an easy one because it's a white background with red dudes. But from an aesthetic standpoint, where else were you guys looking at?
Yeah, so when we didn't really have the visual design nailed initially, because we made a video using assets from Rico, so we had these sort of cel-shaded characters in a more realistic environment, and it looked cool, but it was not striking in the way it is now. So we tried out a bunch of different stuff over a course of time, and Dave, who's the lead artist on the project, kind kind of came up with the idea of doing something that was influenced by like Saul Bass movie titles and things like that, and then that kind of led it to the like Bond themes, and then the more recent Casino Royale theme, which this ended up being kind of very similar to in lots of ways. So yeah, it was kind of a lot of things kind of coalesced into the look that it's got. And we get the Super Hot comparison quite a lot, but I think it's as much because we've both tried to solve the same problem, which is with limited resources and the need for absolute clarity in what's going on, because we have to convey a huge amount of information in this game, whereas in Super Hot you need to be able to look at the scene and know what's going to happen next. So we're both trying to aim for a situation where you as a player know what's going to happen next without too much extraneous stuff. So having very kind of contrasty characters with the environment really helps with that.
Very cool.
That makes a lot of sense. And the Saul Bass stuff is something that stood out to me immediately. Like, I remember, like, I think 2 years ago when Ape Out was out. And like just the design style with that, and like going back and looking through his catalog of work and the influence that it's even had, like today, like on games that we're playing, I think is phenomenal. And Casino Royale, you mentioned, like it's pulling on my heartstrings every step of the way with what we got going on with that. So I say very well done when it comes to that.
And even from a music perspective as well, like this is very much like this is the theme you would hear as John Wick is going through the club, or you see a big action scene happening with kind of this electronic stuff. Can you tell us more about the music and the process for that?
Yeah, well, that's another thing that's fun working with Paul, is that he's also a well-respected electronic musician. So I basically said, let's do this game, and he was like, yeah, can I do the music? And I was like, well, you're the publisher, you kind of get to decide that. But I mean, luckily he's really good at it, so I don't have to turn around to him and go, you sure about this? Because he just goes away and makes these kind of really kind of sustainable, interesting bits of music that kind of underpin all the action. And I think he's definitely going to be doing more work as we get to version 1 to kind of expand on the soundtrack and maybe make some of it a little bit more situational as well.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Like what a tattoo parlor theme sounds different than a bar theme. I can see that. That'd be cool.
Do you have a favorite tight space?
Do you mean level, or do you mean like does he like
Yes,
stand in a closet, or what do you mean by that, Bobby?
Well, like as far as the ones that we've encountered in the game, like is there a particular setting that has been your favorite tight space to fight in?
That's a good question. I think there are. I like the bathroom because it's kind of the essence of the game all wrapped up in it. It's like a 4x4 level, so it's kind of the perfect size for where it happens in the game, and there's enough stuff to bash people's heads into, and there's doorways as well, and so it has all of the elements. So, and then you can have really neat little replays if you can take everyone out in a couple of turns. It's kind of it's the nicest kind of showcase for what the game offers.
Have you considered, now this is probably more complex than this game is looking to do, but have you considered more contextual based attacks and things like that? Like Bobby just did a head smash on the bar, which is a contextual thing. I could see something. I know we had Bobby, was it our first or second stream, where we did where somebody in the chat asked us to kick somebody onto the
it was actually in the bar,
the tattoo parlor table. What's the bar? I thought it was, oh yeah, you're right, it was just a regular table, not the tattoo one. But I could see something like kicking somebody into a table and it's smashing the table and maybe doing extra damage, and then that's no longer there. Is that something you've considered? Is that something that's too much of a development issue to be able to implement something like that, or how do you feel?
Yeah, essentially we've been talking about this the last couple of days. It's one of those things where the benefit in doing it is is going to be the spectacle of it, but it's going to take proportionally longer than a move that might be usable anywhere in the game.
Right.
And it's balancing those things against each other, and that's not to say we won't necessarily do it. It's just one of the many kind of compromises you sometimes have to make in game development.
Sure.
That's a good one. Pick.
Might I suggest that for something with the bar, if you kick somebody and they would be pushed into the bar, they just fly over it, and it's a no-go zone, like you've done with doorways and things like that, to just throw them out, and then they're completely out of the fight?
Well, interesting. We did have that originally, but because the bar's so long, it made it really easy level. So we deliberately nerfed the bar from being a sort of instant death zone to being something a bit more head smashy. Especially early on in the game, like we do it later on, like in the ninja levels. There's a couple of rooftops which have got long ring outs, but by that point, the enemies are moving around a lot and kind of making your life. It's a lot harder to negotiate them into those sort of situations. So it's a little bit more of a balanced situation for the player.
Makes sense. We have a question here from the chat that I think is interesting. What if we had a PvP mode where a player sets up the tight space and the other player has to fight out of it? I would also consider, like, what would a PvP mode of this even look like, if just in general? Yeah.
So, well, I suppose the question kind of imagines a sort of puzzle mode where you set up specific encounters. Yeah, and then that's it's an interesting idea, and one that does lend itself well to the game. I think you might end up with a bit of an arms race of people trying to, like you have with Mario Maker, of people making millions of virtually impossible levels with only very niche ways to win. But no, it's kind of in my head, the game is sort of a puzzle game anyway, that it's got those elements to it, that you are presented with a situation, but at the moment we randomize certain elements in order to make it more varied, I guess, across the playtime. But having more specific challenges might be an interesting way to go about it.
Yeah, I could even see maybe like a challenge mode. So I used to have this dirty habit of playing Magic the Gathering when I was younger. And I would remember there would be some magazines that have like, hey, here's this puzzle. You need to win on this turn or you're going to lose the next turn. How, with this combination of cards and the way the board is set up, how can you win in this single turn? I could see that being an interesting thing. Of like, here's 50 challenges for fights in tight spaces, maybe almost as a upgraded tutorial of how can I use these cards best to win in this single turn.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've got that classic thing of having chess puzzles in the newspaper.
Sure, absolutely.
You have your pieces all set up, and you're asked to win in a certain number of moves. It's not that I imagine it will be syndicated in newspapers, but the kind of conceptual idea is definitely there.
Here's another good question from the chat. Kree says, I have a gameplay question if that's allowed. I'm dropping all movement cards and keeping only an upgraded slip card. Is this a common practice? I find myself getting trapped with dash and step. And to kind of add on to that, Bobby and I have talked a lot about deck engines and dropping cards that you don't use so you can get more of the cards you do want to use. So do you see that as a viable strategy of dropping a lot of cards so you only have the one that you're looking for?
It is, and that's particularly the slip strategy has become very common amongst players. It's a slight unintended consequence of some things that we do to make things nicer for players. So we do, if you don't have any movement cards, we shuffle a movement card into your hand, which prevents situations where you're utterly incapable of doing things, but people have found ways to manipulate that situation to their own ends. So it's one of those age-old design questions of which audiences are we going to kind of respond to most, and how can we find a way that succeeds for everyone. So that's a conversation that we've been having in terms of do we address that with specific changes to difficulty levels? Do we change that mechanic? Do we alter how good the slip card is and risk annoying people who've come to rely on it? Like there's a load of game design and balance questions all kind of wrapped up in that, which are really interesting things from a design perspective to have to kind of handle. But it's an interesting conundrum, I guess.
Yeah,
but yeah,
I would
think that during early access that will change maybe a couple of times, that people will find that their kind of solid goal techniques from now are not working in a couple of months because we've made certain changes, and some things they'll have to get used to and other things will ebb and flow, because we want everyone to enjoy the games. Finding a solution that works for as many people as possible is obviously going to be our goal there.
Love it.
Yeah, certainly we have found movement cards to be maybe almost even more valuable than attacking cards, because to get out of these tight spaces or to get other enemies in the way of other enemies seems like a way more efficient way of playing than doing the damage yourself. Although I'm sure there are decks where that isn't necessarily the case, and where doing the damage.
That has always been the goal, really, is that you can use your smarts instead of your fists to win the fights, because that is thematically exactly what you want to happen, is that you make the enemies knock each other out and you don't have to get your hands dirty, and it's that's a very Bondy thing to do.
Yeah.
Bobby, I want to congratulate you on allowing Ambassador. That is one thing that we have been terrible at doing, is letting any of these kind of escort characters. Usually have not made it in our runs.
It's like that Thanos thing where it's like, I'm sorry, little one. Like, as soon as I see the yellow, I'm just like, you're gonna help me live. Like, I'll snap if I have to keep going. But if I see that yellow on there, like, my heart breaks a little bit. But I'm like, all right, I'll put you in, like, better you than me in this situation. But as somebody who doesn't traditionally follow around with escorts, like escort missions, I think that's a really interesting tactic to bring into it.
Good save. Very good save there, Bobby.
Yeah, for sure. We can't use shorthand here on the show, but no, I know that we're getting close here on our time together that we set up for hanging out and talking about the game. Chase, is there any questions that we didn't get to that we should?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple. I know before we started talking on stream, you were asking us what games we've been playing recently. I'd like to flip that question back on you. I know game development usually means you don't have a lot of time to play other, but if you have been having some time, what's piquing your interest these days?
So I've recently played a nice little game that's available on Steam called Red Ronin, which has got some similar elements to fights. It's sort of turn-based puzzle, slidey, sword fighting adventure game, and you move through these environments, slashing through enemies and trying to avoid getting attacked. And it's really it's quite a concise experience, and it's quite cheap, and it's just really nicely executed, and a good, I guess, sort of companion to the sorts of things we're doing in Fits in terms of how to present really kind of heavy action in a turn-based way.
Very cool.
For sure.
And then my last question, I'm sorry, I have to ask it. I have to ask it because somebody else will. I don't have a PC. I have a PlayStation 5 and I have a Switch. I know you've written articles in the past. There was a 2016 article I found from you that mentioned how porting is very important. So obviously you're in early access. You're still working on the game. But maybe after a 1.0 release, is this something people might be able to expect in the future, that we might see it come to other consoles? Switch preferable, obviously, but other consoles as well.
It is a question which I'm often asked and am rarely allowed to answer.
Fair, totally fair.
I'm afraid, but yes, it would. Yes, expect announcements on that sort of thing when the time comes.
Sounds great. And yeah, that's kind of all we can ask. James, I really appreciate you letting us fight a little more effectively in tight spaces. Bobby, was there anything else that you wanted to ask James?
No, I just, I want to say thanks again. Like you've been super kind to come on here with us and talk about this game that you've made that we've really been taken by. And I know that we've shared a lot within our community, and we've had a lot of offline chats about like how much we enjoy the game. And just over the last several weeks that we've been doing this run on Monday nights with your game, to have you come and play with us today, this means a whole lot. And just want to say thanks again for all that you're doing with the game and the community on Discord that you have, which is super active, and then even taking some time out of your busy schedule to hang out and share your thoughts with us.
Well, no problem at all. It's been a pleasure. Best of luck with the finishing the run later. I know you mentioned before that you might have left yourself in a sticky situation.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting for sure. If people are watching the stream right now, back later tonight, Monday night, is all right for fighting in tight spaces. That's the name of the show, so obviously that's when we do it. But we're taking on the final round, which is kind of just everyone. You're throwing everything at us at this point, and we've got a major injury. We've got a couple movement options with us. It's gonna be an interesting time, and I'm looking forward to either watching us fail spectacularly or win.
Yeah. So are you at the start of the final mission? You at the start of the final fight?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any words of wisdom?
The ramp up of difficulty for that last mission is a big ramp. And if it's your first time through, if you succeed, then you will have the admiration of millions, because that will be an impressive feat. And if you die on your next fight, no one will be surprised. There will be no shame in that.
That's fair.
You'll have done your best. But yeah, absolutely best of luck with it. I shall look forward to watching that.
You're not making me feel any better about our chances, but you are making that
I'm
will
gonna
be
do my
okay.
best to prep today.
Bobby will just throw it on me that I was supposed to be the strategic genius, and I probably failed it.
Yes, I know. I'm
sure
just
that's
the dude clicking the buttons at this point in time. James, so yeah, we'll be streaming that again tonight, 10:30 p.m. Central Time, here on our channel. Is there anything that you want to plug for your Discord or for your Twitter account, anything like that? Anything that people can like get in touch and follow a little bit more about what's going on with this game and its journey?
Yeah, if people like the game, then definitely join the Discord and get involved in chatting to the folk there, because they're all friendly and got good advice about playing the game and some of the wilder tactics that you can use. Stay up to date with kind of our social media, Fights Game on Twitter, and that would be the kind of best place to go for updates and when we're doing new stuff and when the new updates are coming. We're just going to kind of keep on rolling through to version 1 and kind of hopefully keep everyone happy and playing the game.
Sounds great. And it's on Steam right now, $25 for the full version or the early access full version. The Prologue is free. You are also on Xbox, correct?
Yeah, so we're going through game preview on Xbox, so you can go there and you can buy the game now. It says pre-order, but that's their word for buy now and play it until it's available, kind of in its full version. So yeah, yes, definitely buy the game if you've liked what you've seen, because that just gives us more fire to do more exciting things.
Can't wait to see what you do with it. Again, thank you so much for hanging out with us here at the Casual Hour. We'll be back tonight as we continue that run that Chase was mentioning. James, I hope you have a great day. Please take care and keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks, guys. Pleasure.
Right, take care. Thanks, everyone.